right, hey guys. So, today we're going to be talking about the last method for factoring polynomials. So we've talked about the methods we use for 2 terms, the methods we use for 3 terms, and finally we're at 4 terms. Okay, so again, we have this little fill in the blank thing here, just our little checklist. So we've been adding on to that every day. So let's fill it out again, get this information saved into our brain, right? Okay, so let me zoom in to this, right? So remember, what is step 1? What do we always have to do with any polynomial, no matter how many terms? So we have to check for a greatest common factor. And again, you can just write GCF. Okay, and then if a polynomial has 2 terms, what are the 3 methods that we use to factor that polynomial? It's the difference of squares, difference of cubes, and sum of cubes. Okay, and then for 3 terms, what are the 3 methods that we learned yesterday that we factor a trinomial with? And remember, there were 2 different instances where we would pick to use one. So the first one we used was guess and check. Okay, and that was if the trinomial had a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, and then the 2 options we had, if it had a leading coefficient other than 1, was gross product and bottoms up. Okay, so those are 3 ways we went over yesterday. Okay, and then today we're looking at 4 terms of the polynomial. So with this one, we're going to factor by grouping. Okay, and we kind of talked about that yesterday. Today we're going to go a little more in depth with that, and we're solely just going to be doing grouping, no other factoring methods going on with grouping. Okay, so make sure you have all those blanks filled in on your notes. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with our examples for the day. All right, so again, we're going to be talking about grouping. Think about, we used that yesterday in the bottoms up method. So that's when we kind of grouped different terms together to create something new. So let's look at this first example. Okay, so we have 12xy plus 2x plus 30y plus 5. So we have, how we do that is we're going to group these terms together into 2 binomials first. So let's zoom in just a little bit more. And so we're going to take those first 2 terms, the 12xy plus 2x, and make that a binomial, and then take the 30y plus 5 and make that a binomial. Okay, so if you'll remember yesterday, once we put that and made it into 2 different binomials, next thing we did is factor those binomials. So we're going to factor out anything that we can from each of those. Let's look at the first one. So the first one has an x and a y. The second term only has an x. So we can't take out a y, but we can take out an x. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down, taking out the 1x. Okay, and then look at the coefficients. We have 12 and 2. So 2 can go into both of those numbers. So we can take out a 2 as well. Okay, so if we take out 2x out of both of those terms, we'd be left with 6y plus 1. Okay. All right, now let's look at the second binomial, 30y plus 5, and see what we can factor out from that. So, and we only have a y on the first term. We don't have any variables on the second term. So it looks like we just need to look at the coefficients. We can take 5 out of 30. So let's try that. taking that 5 out, we'd be left with 6y plus 1. Okay, now what do you notice that is the same in what we've written so far? All right, we have that 6y plus 1 that was left over from both of those binomials. You'll remember from yesterday when we were grouping, we had that same situation. So that's kind of what we want to look for. What we're aiming for is to have those binomials come down to be the same thing, okay, usually. So now what we're going to do is, you'll remember we took those two that were the same and basically just made them 1. Okay, basically what we're doing when I say that is we're factoring out that whole part from everything. So when we factor out the 6y plus 1 from both of those, so let's say we're going to factor out 6y plus 1, we'd be left with 2x times 1, because we factored out where that 6y plus 1 was, and then plus 5 times 1. Okay, so I put those 1s there just to show that's where the 6y plus 1 was before we factored it out of both of those terms. Okay, now we have that 6y plus 1 at the front, and then the other binomial after that, and we can just simplify that to not include the 1s. So that would be 6y plus 1 times 2x plus 5. And that is our answer. That is how we factor by grouping, okay? All right, so we're going to box in that answer. And again, if you want to check that, you can check it by multiplying those together, okay? So now what you should do is go to that next example and try it on your own, and then we will come back and go over it together. All right, so first thing we need to do is check and see if there's a greatest common factor. Since we have even and odd numbers, we may not, I don't see anything that could go into all of those numbers or any variables we can take out of all of those. So let's just go ahead and move on with our grouping, okay? So first thing we're going to do is separate it into binomials. So for the first one, we're going to have that 6ab plus 2a, and then the second one is 15b plus 5, okay? Now we're going to factor both of those binomials, so factor out what we can. In this first one, we can factor out 2a, so that means we'd be left with 3b plus 1. Okay, and then in the second one, we can factor out a 5. And just a 5, no variable, because we have a constant in there. So we'd be left with 3b plus 1. So again, we're left with those two binomials, 3b plus 1, that are the same thing. So that must mean we're doing something right, okay? So now we're going to factor out that 3b plus 1 from both of those terms. So 3b plus 1 will now be at the front. And we are left with 2a times 1 plus 5 times 1. Okay, and remember, those times 1s is just showing where that 3b plus 1 came from. Okay, so I'm just going to erase those and rewrite it to be plus 5. Okay, so that is our final answer, and let's go ahead and multiply this one to see if it matches up to be our original polynomial, okay? So let's do FOIL. Love using FOIL. So let's do the first two terms. 3b times 2a, that's going to be 6ab. And then the outside terms, 3b times 5, that's going to be plus 15b. And then the inside terms, 1 times 2a is plus 2a. And then the two last terms would be plus 5. Okay, So 6ab, and then we're going to add those middle terms. So it's going to be plus 17. Or we can't add, sorry, got a little lost, didn't I? We can't add those middle terms, can we? Because one is a b term and one is an a term. So that is our final answer, and that does match what we have, right? Though that 15b and the 2a are switched, but it means the same thing either way because it's addition. So that does work, and that is our correct answer, okay? So this is really easy method, right? There's not a lot of work to this one. So not a lot of instruction for today. What I'd like y'all to do now is go to your Savas Realize, and you've been assigned assignment 5.5. Okay, it's just going over a bunch of factoring problems. So you'll be using all your methods. So I would pull out your notes and see which methods you need to use on which problems. Okay, so complete that assignment, and then once you're done with that, there's an exit ticket on Google Slides, so make sure you complete and get that in too. And I'll see y'all next time.